think what we're going to do is discuss a little bit. See, I'm used to pacing. When I talk, I pace, and you got me kind of crowded in here. So bear with me, because I can't talk unless I'm pacing. Going to talk a little bit about the history here. I think we'll probably start off with the with the history of the Memphis and Charleston Railroad, since that seems to be part of the history associated with the Cherokee in this particular area. But the Memphis and Charleston actually started off as a very small. It was the first railroad actually that was built west of the Alleghenies. It was built over in Tuscumbia in 1832. It started out as a 2.1 mile track that went from the cotton gin down to the river. So they would, it was drawn by horses. Problem was once you got it down to the river and put it on boats, there was an area that's called the shoals that was mentioned before. Now the shoals, because the water level in the Tennessee River, especially around the area, rises and lowers several times during the year. When the water was low, the shoals, the water was too low, and you couldn't make it across the shoals. So what they'd have to do is when they reached the shoals, they'd have to stop the boats, take the cotton, offload it, take it around the shoals, put it back on the barges again, and continue on the way. Well, somebody had the bright idea that it would be interesting to go ahead and extend the Tuscumbia Railway to Cortland. Cortland's about halfway between here and Tuscumbia. So from Cortland to Tuscumbia is about 20 miles or so, give or take. So they went to Cortland first, and then they said, well, as long as we're going to Cortland, why don't we just go ahead and go all the way to Decatur? So Decatur, they brought it to Decatur. From Tuscumbia to Decatur is 43 miles. Now, the railroad there were some problems. The railroad kind of deteriorated by the late 1840s and the early 1850s. Not much going on. There was a grant. A guy over in Tuscumbia decided that what they wanted to do was turn it into a railroad that would connect Memphis with Charleston. And so it grew westward from Tuscumbia to Memphis. It grew from from Decatur to Huntsville, then from Huntsville to Chattanooga. Now in Chattanooga, the railroad itself only covered about 257 miles. But when it got to Chattanooga, they rented tracks that went from Chattanooga to Atlanta to Augusta and then over to Charlotte. So as I say, and that was important because that made it was the first railroad to connect the Atlantic Ocean and Mississippi River. That made it the longest railroad in the world at the time. Civil War comes along. The eastern headquarters of Memphis and Charleston was over in Huntsville. So there was a big depot over there. In fact, there was a roundhouse. There were some shops where they built parts for the locomotives. They built boxcars and passenger cars there. There was an area that was built for people who worked on the railroad, and actually the houses that were built for folks who worked on the railroad were built in the shops over there, and of course provided rent-free for people who worked on the railroad. The depot was captured in 1862 during the Civil War. General Ormsby McKnight Mitchell with the 4th Ohio Army captured the depot. There was a train that had just come in from the Battle of Shiloh. Had 159 prisoners aboard. Those who were wounded too badly to be moved were left in the boxcars in the yard. That left about 90 men that Mitchell had to find a place that would be large enough and secure enough to house until he could send them to a prisoner of war camp off up in Ohio. So the third floor of Huntsville Depot became a federal prison for 10 days in 1862. Now, one of the things that the prisoners did when they were up there was put graffiti on the walls. So if you go over today to tour the Huntsville Depot, on the third floor, you'll still see graffiti up there that goes back to, it goes from 1862 to about 1940. 1940, it was painted over, everybody forgot about it. Then when we were turning it into a museum, we uncovered it, and that's one of the things that's kind of saved it as a museum now. Last passenger train went through Huntsville in, Memphis and Charleston went bankrupt in 1898. Southern bought it out. Last passenger train went through Huntsville in March the 31st, 1968. Since then, there have been no passenger trains that have gone through Huntsville, except for an occasional special event type train. But most of the traffic that you get through Huntsville these days is are freight trains, and especially the last 2 years, we get probably in a 6-hour period, we'll get maybe as many as a dozen trains that pass by, going from east to west or west to east or whatever. And so, as I say, if you get a chance, go over to Huntsville and take a look over there. Now, a little history just a quick little history of Decatur. Decatur was actually one of the original names of Decatur was Rhodes Ferry. Now, there are those who say that Rhodes Ferry was initially one of the initial names was Cateka. Cateka was a Chickasaw chief, and this area, the town, was named after him. Now, there is a town that's north of here by about 20 miles or so, 15 miles or so, that's called Cateka, and they say that may perhaps is a remnant of what of the village that used to be here. But Rhodes comes in, establishes a ferry to ferry people across the river here. In 1804, I guess it is, James Madison is making a tour through the South. He wants some town to change its name to Decatur. And he kind of tries to get people all excited about the name. Anybody know who Decatur is? Decatur is named after Stephen Decatur. Anybody know who Stephen Decatur is? Go ahead. Say again?
Navy Commodore.
Yes, and what was he not? He had a saying that he was famous for. What was it? Does anybody remember what it was? My country, right or wrong. And so the folks of Decatur, the folks of Rhodes Ferry decided to name the town Decatur. Say again? Oh, Stephen Decatur. He was an admiral. He was a U.S. admiral, and he actually was killed in a duel in Washington, and that was one of the reasons that, like I say, Madison was looking for somebody to name a town after him. So Rhodes Ferry became Decatur. Civil War comes along. Civil War really Decatur had a really hard time during the Civil War because of it was on the river. It had the railroad. It had a road, and because of the amount of traffic that came through here, this was a site that both the Union and the Confederates wanted. So Decatur was pretty much destroyed, according to what some folks wrote at the time. After the Civil War was over, people came from north. From up north. There was a place that was called New Decatur. That was built alongside Decatur. And that was built by some of these folks that came from the north. There's a lot of tension between Decatur and New Decatur because of the name. Finally, New Decatur called itself Albany. Again, there was some tension. They finally decided to all become Decatur because they needed a bridge that went across the river here. So Decatur has been Decatur since then, but there's still that kind of invisible line that defines Old Decatur from New Decatur. Now, we do have a lot of interesting places to see in Decatur. A lot of interesting people who hang out here. A lot of ghosts who run up and down the street here. There's a street here called Bank Street. Bank Street has a ghost that you can see running up and down the street every once in a while. Man after my own heart. His name was Simp McGee. There's a restaurant down that was named after him. But Simp McGee was a riverboat pilot. And he used to go up and down the Tennessee River here. And he liked to drink a lot. And when he went drinking, he used to take with him his pig. because he said that all men were swine. And if he was going to drink with swine, he might as well bring his own along with him. So when he went drinking in Decatur, he would take his swine with him. He was out one night enjoying the darker side of Huntsville, shall we say. Got into it with another riverboat captain. Riverboat captain took his gloves off, slapped Simp across the face, challenged him to a duel. Because Simp had been challenged to a duel, he was the one that was could choose the time and the place and the weapons. Well, he decided the following morning at dawn, the captain on his boat, Simp on his boat. So the two boats were on the river. It was a cloudy morning, foggy morning. The fog began to lift. When the fog began to lift, there was the challenger had his gun pointed at Simp's boat, hammer cocked, ready to go. Simp was standing on his boat. Beside him was a cannon. And in the cannon there was a fuse, and he had a cigar, and he lit the cannon, and the captain of the other boat backed down, so of course Simp took the fuse off, and that was that. But there was a lady in town here by the name of Luckner, Kate Luckner. Now Kate Luckner was married and had a son. She and Simp fell in love. She left her husband to be with Simp. Her husband and her ex-husband, I guess, and son ended up out in Arizona. There's still some people around here who kind of keep up with him out there. But he and Kate spent a lot of time together. Now, Bank Street down there that goes from the river all the way to the end of the street almost and back. Kate on Sunday afternoons would take these open carriages, put all of her girls in these open carriages, and ride down the middle of the street to show people of Decatur what her wares were. And when cars became popular, she used open cars for that. She was so famous that you can find a lot of her posters now for her town, for her thanks. As far away as New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia. Now, Simp, as I say, was a riverboat pilot. There was an area between here and Chattanooga called the Chute. And the rapids were really, really bad there. The government had decided that what you needed to do was have ropes that would pull the boats up the chute to avoid any sort of disasters. Well, Simp comes up. He's like the 12th in line. He doesn't want to wait. He tells his men, throw the fat on the fire. Because you put the fat on the fire, they'd make the boiler hotter, and he fired the thing up, shot past the 11 boats ahead of him. He was eventually turned into the federal government, who took away his license. Within a couple of months of him losing his license, he moved in with Kate. He lived with Kate for a couple of months before he died. On his deathbed, they say, his last words were, "They sings me to death." And Kate, of course, took care of all of the funeral arrangements, and she continued with her business for several decades thereafter. And I think her house was eventually torn down in 1967. I think it was. But that kind of gives you an overview of several different views of Decatur. So, thanks.
Video production made possible by the National Trail of Tears Association. The Trail of Tears Association is a non-profit, membership-based organization established in 1993 with the purpose of passing the history of this significant event in Native American history onto future generations. If you're interested in finding out more about the Trail of Tears Association or would like to become a member, please visit our website at www.nationaltoda.com. There, you can learn more about the National Association, the state chapters, as well as how to become a member. To connect with the association for upcoming events and to be notified when future videos are released, be sure to like the Trail of Tears Association Facebook page and subscribe to our National Trail of Tears Association YouTube channel. Thanks again for watching this video, and for your support.